All right, ladies and gentlemen, MrSotko here. Welcome back to the channel, and today I got no news for you other than the fact that it's Bitcoin's 12th birthday. Well, the white paper is, because, there's two kind of divides. The white paper was released on October 31st, 2008, and the mining didn't begin till early January of 2009. So it's got two birthdays. Why not? Sure. And Bitcoin, it's brought us all those ups and downs. It's brought us the ICOs and every single altcoin that you can think of, the inspiration for digital payments, and of course the inspiration for BitConnect and being financially independently. However, everything else, it's all good. So it's been a dozen years since October 31st, 2008, since the white paper was published. If you guys haven't read the white paper, it's really easy to find, and it's really not a hard read, and it's actually really good. And so to mark this anniversary, I'm going to read this article here, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about some fees, too, later on, because things are getting a little out of control with that $14,000 Bitcoin, or almost $14,000 Bitcoin. James Angel, an associate professor at Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business, told Cointelegraph it has set in motion a revolution in finance with the rise of DeFi apps, smart contracts, coin offerings, in addition to payment revolution that is leading to central banks talking about digital currencies. And he'd be pleased to see the evolution and new applications of his vision. And I think so too, to some degree, but I also kind of have a different idea of Satoshi in my head. I think we all have like this Satoshi in our head that believes in one thing or another, and it's probably related to our own beliefs. But hey, that's just a thing, right? The influence of Bitcoin's white paper goes beyond finance. Its impact is worthy of being considered alongside other major technical innovations, such as the personal computer and the internet itself. And I think that Satoshi should be given a Nobel Prize in economics, whether it's posthumously or just anonymously. I believe that. Where it should be kept, I really don't know. But I believe Bitcoin itself definitely deserves a Nobel Prize in economics for sure. Would Satoshi be disappointed? Which is a pretty good question, actually. Satoshi's vision for the peer-to-peer or decentralized digital cash system, as referenced in the white paper's title, the problem with incumbent digital commerce was that it was relied exclusively on financial institutions serving as trusted third parties to process electronic payments. Satoshi wrote that had inherent weaknesses. Transactions could be reversed, banks had to mediate disputes, and transaction costs were high. Satoshi's solution was present in the second paragraph of the white paper's introduction. What is needed is an electronic payment-based system on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly without or with each other without the need for a trusted third party. In the 12 years since the paper's publication, the need for peer-to-peer transactions without interfering third parties has become something of an article of faith among Bitcoinists. But on reflection, has this aspect of Satoshi's vision been fulfilled? Somebody says, I think the greatest source of disappointment for Nakamoto would be the increasing centralization of Bitcoin blockchain governance in entities such as mining pools and even central banks, which are on the verge of launching their own cryptocurrencies. Nakamoto's mission was to challenge the hegemony of central banks, and ironically, the greatest issuers of digital currencies seem likely to be the central banks themselves, which is a really good quote. Because when Bitcoin first came out, there was no such thing as a mining pool. That came later, and there was no. In fact, GPU mining and FPGA mining came about around the same time, I believe in 2010. It could have been 2011. So it was just meant to be on your CPU. So if 2009 rolled around, you could simply use just about any computer in your house, a laptop, which would probably get pretty hot, but it could be done. and you could find blocks on your own. You would have to run your own node on a computer, and it could be the same computer that you're mining from, but you would actually have to run your own node and set up all kinds of things to your router to actually make it talk to itself and run and open up ports and stuff like that, and then sort of essentially mine to yourself, and then it would relay to all the other nodes that were around. And now there are mining pools, and now there are institutions, which is sort of the antithesis of what Bitcoin was supposed to be about. Somebody says Nakamoto would be astonished by the growth of blockchain projects and many thousands of digital coins and tokens that have been created in the image of Bitcoin. Yet, at the same time, I think a lot of those tokens were merely for profit. I think Bitcoin came about as a pretty altruistic type coin. Now, it's true that Satoshi Nakamoto almost certainly mined quite a bit of Bitcoin. And a lot of people say that he mined 1 million Bitcoin or 1.1 million Bitcoin, but unfortunately, we actually don't know. We never know who's actually getting the Bitcoin. Now, it goes to a public key, of course, but you don't know who's actually attached to that public key, particularly back then. Nowadays, a lot of times your public key is likely on an exchange or something like that, or maybe it's your donation to a website or to a person, and then you know who that Bitcoin is actually going to. And if you've seen that exact public key in the block transaction as a block reward or something like that, you would know who actually mined that, even though now today it's just thousands and thousands of ASICs mining all at once. And it would be difficult to do that, but still certainly possible. Now, back then, everybody was sort of mining on their own node that you set up in your house. And so the idea that Satoshi mined 1 million Bitcoin, don't let anybody fool you. Nobody actually knows for sure. Now, I do believe that Satoshi Nakamoto mined Bitcoin. And now if I created Bitcoin, I would certainly mine it myself for at least a little while to understand that it actually was working correctly, and maybe like set up different addresses like every time I get a block, etc., etc. So, and another thing is too, would he be happy about the unbelievable amount of power that it actually takes? So the idea too is that Satoshi didn't realize that if the world were to actually adopt Bitcoin, the hash rate would be so high and so competitive that he didn't even realize that GPUs would begin to mine. And then you could create FPGAs to mine it, or at least program to them to, and then create ASICs to mine it. And then eventually, one ASIC is not going to do the job. So you're going to add 2, then you're going to add 3, 4, 5, and then eventually you're going to have a literal warehouse of ASICs to be mining, which sometimes I have read in articles where entire power plants have been resurrected and brought online on behalf of Bitcoin mining farms. So while the white paper says a lot about transaction fees, CPU power, network nodes, proof of work chains, and even gambler's ruin problem, it says nothing much about the larger world around, including the environment. Angel contends that Satoshi would be shocked by the environmental damage caused by Bitcoin mining arms race. Adding, at current hash rates and mining efficiency, Bitcoin mining alone is consuming about 7 gigawatts of electricity, which is the equivalent of 7 Chernobyl power plants. And what little is known about Satoshi's politics, his creation in the form of the first digital crypto blockchain, would be disturbed by the idea of central bank digital currencies. And in some cases, those currencies are designed for repressive governments to engage in even more surveillance and control of their populations. So this all has created something totally new in the fact that Satoshi actually, one of his greatest achievements was to sort of eliminate the double spend problem. Now, the double spend problem was a tough problem before this with digital currencies, in that most people could easily Sybil attack, whereas Bitcoin sort of separated the mining and the node process. Now, you might be able to run a node on your own computer and actually mine to that same node. They are essentially separate entities, whereas digital currencies before that were just all nodes and not necessarily miners. The miners and the node were the same thing. And so you could do a Sybil attack, and a Sybil attack is essentially getting a ton of different computers, or you could create virtual computers, like millions of them, and then just essentially vote that coins are going to this way or that way, or that these people are going to lead charge, or these nodes are correct and these nodes are not. Whereas the nodes really don't do too much in Bitcoin, aside from saying, this is correct. That's basically what they do. And they confirm transactions by going, and then that's it. Whereas the miners are doing the brunt of the work, and so it's sort of separated. And it was really as easy as that, but nobody could really figure it out before then. So a lot of things have come from Bitcoin, and I'm certain we all appreciate that. And this is why I think that Satoshi wouldn't like the institutions with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin was supposed to be just mined with your CPU power. It was supposed to be like for the people, by the people, sort of a cliche thing like that, where you could send just small amounts of money to somebody online, whether it be for just a small transaction or a simple internet favor or something like that, or small task that you did for somebody that would be too expensive to send somebody a small amount of money, but you could do that with Bitcoin. And I think that was a big oversight by Satoshi, that the more people that are going to get on it, eventually your CPU is simply not going to be enough, and you're going to have to find something stronger. You're going to have to find something that can hash faster and faster. And it's not even just that, it's just the fact that the human greed is always going to be in play in any kind of system, and that if it's something is worth money, people will do anything to gain an edge on that. And that's where we are today, with warehouses packed to the ceiling all the way to the back, to the front, and ASIC miners, which is pretty centralized. Was that an oversight? I believe so. I don't think he thought it was going to go this far, that maybe he was just going to see how it worked, and that he would take things one day at a time and be able to update the code as needed over time. So the introduction of the white paper, for anybody that didn't read it, I will read this, and it will sort of give you the idea of what Satoshi was thinking about. And again, it is pretty subjective. Commerce on the internet has come to rely almost exclusively on financial institutions serving as trusted third parties to process electronic payments. While the system works well enough for most transactions, it still suffers from the inherent weakness of the trust-based model. Completely non-reversible transactions are really not possible, since financial institutions cannot avoid mediating disputes. The cost of mediation increases transaction cost, limiting the minimum practical transaction size, meaning that he wanted Bitcoin to be used for both large, possibly, and what I get from that is small transactions too, like, hey, make me a thumbnail for a video, or hey, make me a picture, or hey, do this over the internet, and then you would be able to tip somebody with Bitcoin because it wouldn't cost you anything, or at least very, very little. And cutting off the possibility for small, casual transactions, and there was a broader cost in the loss of ability to make non-reversible payments for non-reversible services. With the possibility of reversal, the need for trust spreads. Merchants must be wary of their customers, hassling them for more information than they would otherwise need. A certain percentage of fraud is accepted as unavoidable. These cost and payment uncertainties can be avoided in person by using physical currency, but no mechanism exists to make payments over a communications channel without a trusted party, meaning online. You would have to use PayPal, or you'd have to use some kind of Visa or MasterCard or some kind of debit card, credit card transaction online, which always has a middleman, which is always going to take your money for basically no reason. What is needed is an electronic system based on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party. Transactions that are computationally impractical to reverse would protect sellers from fraud, and routine escrow mechanisms could easily be implemented to protect buyers. Satoshi actually had a lot of ideas for different kind of smart contracts and escrow things, etc., etc. He even hinted at the idea. He said in the future, the block size can be increased. He once said on as a forum post. So the 1 megabyte block size at first did not exist, and then it was found that that was sort of a problem, because when Bitcoin first came out, it had no maximum block size. And well, that's sort of a problem, because any malicious entity could spam the Bitcoin blockchain up something fierce like that, and then create massive, unbelievable, like gigabyte sized or 100 megabyte sized blocks, which would be pretty impractical for node users to run, because if every 10 minutes you're writing 100 megabytes to your block or to your hard drive, well, quite frankly, your hard drive is going to fill up by the end of the day. I think in 2009, I had an old computer. I think I had like a 40 or a 60 gigabyte hard drive, I think, on my old computer. And it would fill up very quickly. So eventually the 1 megabyte block size was increased, or was as set as a limiter. And then Satoshi said this 1 megabyte block size is sort of arbitrary, and it can be increased in the future, which has never been done, as there's a lot of financial incentive for various third parties to not increase the block size. Namely, Blockstream creates third-party solutions for Bitcoin so that you can kind of go around the blockchain, and it's really in their best interest to make sure that the 1 megabyte block size is kept in check, because if you were a third-party solution for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was able to expand, well, you would essentially be useless and you'd be out of business. So technically there's actually quite a bit of financial incentive to keep the block size at 1 megabyte, although I do not personally agree with that, and I don't think most Bitcoiners agree with that either. So in this paper, we propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer distributed timestamp server to generate computational proof of the chronological order of transactions. The system is secure as long as an honest node collectively control more CPU power than any cooperating group of attacker nodes. So while Satoshi did technically kind of resolve the 51% attack problem or the double spend problem, it's not necessarily true. As long as you had more hash power than anybody else, i.e. 51% attack, which happens like all the time with Ethereum Classic for some reason, you can disrupt the system. However, Satoshi, essentially made Bitcoin in such a way that you financially you wouldn't want to do that, because financially you would just want to keep mining, and financially you would want to keep getting those incentives of Bitcoin, because eventually you're going to be found out as the bad attacker and you're going to lose that chain. The chain will just switch to the good chain, the good blockchain, and then your Bitcoin is as good as a useless token, and nobody on the actual Bitcoin blockchain could accept your tokens. So you have incentive to actually play by the rules. And it was sort of solved, again, by separating nodes and miners to separate the actual nodes and miners. Instead, previous systems like BitGold just sort of used a mining node system, which you could just Sybil attack very easily. So it's a lot better in a lot of ways, but it's sort of a myth, I suppose. I think it's not quite accurate to say that Satoshi solved the double spending problem, because it's not quite. However, he made it quite difficult to do, and also incentivized you to not do that as well. So that's Bitcoin in a nutshell. We love Bitcoin. I just wanted to talk about it because it's Happy Birthday Bitcoin Whitepaper, and I figured I'd give you guys some of that good old Bitcoin insight. But moving on, since Bitcoin's at nearly $14,000, we're about to see that skyrocketing fees and them transaction taking days. You guys remember that 2017 super high of $20,000. I think a lot of people that are coming into crypto now, as it has been nearly 3 years, might actually have gotten into crypto after that. But if you guys don't remember that, in December of 2017, within about 2 weeks, I think it was December 17th, 2017 was the all-time high of Bitcoin. It was like 19,900 and some odd. Basically, everybody just calls it 20,000. Might as well just round it. And the fees were unbelievable. It was something like $30 per transaction, and in some cases even more. I think $30 was like an average. I actually remember spending $30 to send a Bitcoin one time. And that's simply, there was a lot of reasons back then why it was so high. First of all, wallets weren't as good as calculating fees. Two, Bitmain was just releasing, it was like Bitmain, Roger Ver, and everybody bringing out the Bitcoin Cash thing. I know Roger Ver wasn't actually the inventor of it, but he was sort of the promoter and yada yada. I sort of just always throw him in that basket. Bitcoin Cash came along, and there was this huge hash war. There was this huge war over which one is going to receive the BTC ticker on exchanges and stuff. And Bitmain was really, really, really invested into Bitcoin Cash. They were also really invested into Bitcoin as well. And they had more miners than anybody because they're the ones that make them. So what they were doing was spamming the Bitcoin blockchain with very, very small transactions. And since they're the biggest miner in the world, essentially with their pool, or they were at the time, or something along those lines, they're actually going to get the majority of those fees back as miner fee rewards. So it really didn't cost them that much to do that. So they were sort of spamming the transactions, and also exchanges weren't batching properly. There was a lot of things back then that weren't so good as they are today. However, BTC has been experiencing quite a set of interconnected issues. As the hash rate has dropped, the fees on the congested network have been rising, and the users claim to be waiting days for their transactions to be confirmed, some of which might be dropped by the miners. However, some relief might come next week. And I actually took a look at the Bitcoin blockchain. You guys can just Google that and go to the Bitcoin Block Explorer. And the latest block, or at least before I started this video, was 34 minutes ago. I think it was like 34 or 37 minutes ago. There's supposed to be an average of 10 minutes apiece, about 6 per hour. And the last one wasn't actually found for 37 minutes ago, again, before making this video. So by the time you get to that, there's going to be totally different blocks up there. But again, that's pretty insane to have all of those transactions piling up for 34 minutes without actually going through. And sometimes they're much faster than that, and sometimes they're much slower than that. It's just, it's starting to get pretty congested with the nearly 14,000 Bitcoin, and especially Square and various other institutions buying like $7 billion worth of it in the matter of a few months. And this is happening at a time when BTC rallied 27% in a month, almost hitting $14,000 before correcting lower again to 13,500. I think it's about 13,700 right now. Meanwhile, however, the clearly congested network comes a jump in the transaction fee. The average Bitcoin transaction fee on October 28th, which is the 31st now, was $11.67. It particularly spiked starting October 19th, climbing a whopping 505%. Since then, the 7-day moving average shows a jump of nearly 210% between these two dates to US $6.75. Similarly, the median transaction fee on October 28th was $6.88, which is a massive rise from October 17th's dip, which was about 60 cents. So you could see it here, the average transaction fee just it sort of looped up in October there, and I think we had a slight dip, and then wow, nearly $14,000. So fees should drop once difficulty readjusts early next week. However, the problem is the difficulty going to adjust down, or is it going to adjust up? I think it's probably going to adjust up, in my opinion, because the higher the price, the more miners want to jump in on it. But fair enough, said Bitcoin developer Matt Odell. Though we don't know much how fees will drop, if transactions will clear fully, and how long that will take if they do. Per miningpoolbtc.com, difficulty is expected to drop 10% in more than 4 days as Bitcoin block time surpassed 14 minutes, while the goal for the average block time is 10 minutes. So a bit of a small drop, but it still depends on how many miners are about to jump in and plugging in because of $14,000 Bitcoin. And most of the mining comes from China, or at least the hash rate, as there's massive mining farms in China. And from time to time, there are some pretty fierce storms and floods in China because they always seem to build these mining warehouses in a flood zone, which maybe probably don't do that in the flood zone. I don't know. Maybe they don't have a choice. I'm not sure. Probably a bad idea to build them there. But it happens from time to time, and then just hundreds of ASIC miners get washed away downstream, and then the hash rate drops for a little while. People have been commenting on social media sites that their transactions haven't been confirmed for hours or days now. Others noted, however, that those transactions with higher fees will get confirmed sooner. Who would have thought, right? As these are more profitable for the miners. So if you do go to send a BTC transaction, usually if you do it on an exchange, you don't really have a choice how much you actually pay for the transaction because the exchange kind of does it for you. But if you actually have a wallet, you can choose how many Satoshis you actually want to pay for the transaction. And the minimum is 1 Satoshi. And if you pay 1 Satoshi, well, yeah, you're going to wait days for your transaction. So it's never 1 Satoshi. Chief Technology Officer of Crypto Security Specialist Casa commented that the recent drop in hash rate or computational power of the Bitcoin network led to certain Bitcoin nodes reaching their full capacity, so those users who've broadcasted lowest fee transactions might not see them get relayed. Hash rate dropped nearly 38% from its highest point of 157.65 exahash it reached on October 17th to 97.95 exahash 10 days later. It went up 7%, however. So, I wonder what that gigantic slash in hash rate is. I suspect it's probably just, again, a Bitcoin a mining farm got washed away in a horrendous Chinese flooding storm, which just seems to happen all the time. Law previously noted that the drop is presumably a result of Chinese miners relocating equipment for the dry season. Wow, called that one. I didn't even read this previously. So yeah, called that one. And they're relocating for the dry season. Oh wow. So wait, so do they relocate? Shouldn't you relocate for the wet season, right? Or for the dry season, you move it closer to the river so that you have lower electricity, and then you have to move it away. Okay, maybe that's what they're talking about. That was just a little bit confusing the way that was worded, but that's Bitcoin in a nutshell today. Extremely high hash rate, extremely high fees, congestion, and happy birthday, Bitcoin. Moving on to CoinMarketCap, we got $400 billion market cap. We haven't seen $400 billion market cap in what feels like quite a while. I remember I used to track the market cap, and we were nearly, I think, at one point below 100, nearly 100 billion market cap for a while there, like when we were at our super low. Yeah, I remember this in 2018. Oh yeah, this was in 2018 was the lowest Bitcoin was. It was like 3,200, or at least in the year 2018, which was the lowest low we've seen since 2017, and we nearly breached $102 billion market cap. We nearly breached below 100 billion, and I think I made a video on that day when it was either below 100 billion or really close to it, and I made a red alert Star Trek theme, and I superimposed the red alert theme from Star Trek on there because I thought it was really fitting. I certainly remember that. I actually remember that date now, and that was quite a while ago. But everything looking pretty good. The market is really focused on Bitcoin right now because of those that PayPal news. Apparently buying cryptocurrencies on PayPal is extremely easy. I've seen people on Reddit saying how easy it was, and then of course everybody else has to comment that it's not your Bitcoin, and it certainly isn't. But apparently they've made it a very easy process. There are no fees currently for buying it, and it does go up and down in price. However, you have no public or private key, so you can't send Bitcoin to yourself or to anybody else. So again, it's just for hodling. I made a video on this a few days ago talking about the PayPal edition of Bitcoin, and I came to the conclusion that there's no reason you should do it except to hodl. Except the last place I would want to hodl is PayPal. So that doesn't make any sense, because if you have to put money onto PayPal, load actual fiat onto PayPal, then load the fiat into Bitcoin, and then you can use the Bitcoin to buy things at various stores and merchants, and then they will just sell your Bitcoin and give the merchant fiat, which I think that's a great idea. However, why would I load it from fiat to Bitcoin, then give it to a merchant when I could just do the fiat to the merchant if they're going to get the fiat regardless? It just seems like an extra step for no reason. And I can't take my Bitcoin from my computer or from a wallet, from an exchange, and then send it to PayPal, probably because they don't want fraudulent reasons. They don't want fraud happening, or they also probably don't want massive congestion because half the world uses PayPal. But probably mostly for the fraud, because you could just steal Bitcoin and then put it on PayPal and then just immediately use it to buy something with a vendor. So it just doesn't make sense. Why should I go through the extra process of buying Bitcoin just to send it to a vendor who's going to just get fiat anyway? So I've come to the conclusion that PayPal is only for hodling, but again, you shouldn't hodl on PayPal. So it doesn't make any sense. But hey, look, $14,000 Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, $14,000, right? It makes no sense. Think about it. It'll blow your mind. You'll just go in circles, just circles. There's no reason to do it. But $14,000 Bitcoin. So Ethereum, not doing so good. I mean, 386 Ethereum, nothing to laugh at, but we are struggling to stay above 400 for Ethereum. And it really, because just the focus is entirely on Bitcoin at the moment, especially with the institutions. I think Grayscale has a total of $7.3 billion worth of cryptocurrency, mostly in Bitcoin, but the rest of it is in various altcoins like Ethereum, Ethereum Classic for some reason, and various other S coins. And let's see, Square is buying a whole bunch. Institutions are sort of rallying in. There's a lot of volume on Backed lately. So it's really about Bitcoin, Marsha type deal. It's the brand name, and it's got the big news right now. And the DeFi market was really pushing Ethereum up, was really pushing up those DeFi coins for a while. But, I kind of called it. All the DeFi coins are essentially bubbles. And don't get me wrong here, it's not nefarious bubbles. It's not like somebody was making them to trick you to like a BitConnect or something like that. I just think that basically a DeFi coin is going to come out. It's going to have a lot of hype. People are going to buy it, raise the price, and then people are just going to start selling it off, because what you do is you put your liquidity onto their platforms, and they give you coin, and they also give you like their platform coin, like Compound or these various other DeFi coins. And then what are you going to do with the Compound? Well, you're just going to sell it, right? So that's just going to drive the price right down. And then another DeFi coin is going to copy that one, of course, because that's just what we've seen. ICOs copy ICOs, smart contracts copy smart contracts. It's BitConnect, and a bunch of other copycats come along with BitConnect and Ponzi schemes. It's what we see. So whenever you see one good thing come out, expect to see 4 or 5 other things of the same exact deal come out with it. And then when those come out, it's going to get pumped in price, obviously, and they're just going to each pop as a new one comes out, as everybody sells it, because there's no real actual use case for Compound or for these various tokens, at least not currently. There's not much productivity in them, and so of course people are just going to sell them. Like, what else are you going to do with it? It's just like mining. You're just going to get some coin, and of course you're just going to sell it off for Bitcoin or something like that. So they're just individual bubbles, just based on the fact that there's really no value, not necessarily. There's value in DeFi, in the idea of DeFi, but not necessarily in the coins that are coming along and just poofed out of existence and just say, hey, we'll give you this coin we made up if you put your crypto on our platform. Trust us. It's fine. No, it's a smart contract. It's okay. It's not like proof of weak hands 1 and 2. Hey, third time's a charm, right? It's a smart contract. You're not going to lose anything. I've actually had a lot of people say that when I ripped on proof of weak hands. They're like, hey, it's like, don't you get it? You're stupid. It's a smart contract. You can read the contract. And the first 2 failed, and I just kind of go, yeah, I told you, that's like, it's a smart contract, so it can't fail. Oh God, people in crypto. I'm sorry, guys. I love you all, but oh my God, sometimes you hurt my brain. But that's all I have for you guys today. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Share the video. That helps me out a lot. Social media in the description below. all kinds of great social media in the description below. So many great things. So many adventures. Follow me. Come on. Whenever you get the chance. There's no time. I'll see you guys next time.